you knew that after you died, you went to heaven, and you knew for certain, would you live your life different? Would you be relieved of some of the anxieties and depressions you have? Ever since we were a child, most of us who were Christian or Muslim were told that after death there's a heaven that was fantastic, that you will have bliss and everlasting happiness. But it's difficult, I'm sure, to believe that unless you've actually spoken with someone who had been there. My name is Dr. John Greene. I'm with RoweDocs Telemedicine Corporation. And before I joined RoweDocs, I was an emergency medicine specialist for the last 38 plus years. I want you to know from this case that I'm going to present today three things: meningioma, near-death experience, and a discussion of heaven. Let's get started. The patient was about my age, and she was very honest, easy to talk to kind of person, and we bonded. And so she had a meningioma that needed to be removed. Meningioma is a tumor of the meninges, and the meninges are the tissue that separates the brain from the inner skull. Most of the time they're pretty benign, but a lot depends on what part of the brain they're pressing against. And she had a pretty benign, but one that needed to be removed. I was an intern at that time and joined a neurosurgical team, Dr. Mose, who was a great person to work with. He had a good sense of humor, as well as he was easygoing, but an excellent neurosurgeon. And then there was Dr. Edwards. Dr. Edwards was a senior surgical resident, and he was the man. He seemed to know everything. And we go to the we go to the operating room, and in the course of removing the meningioma, the skull was drilled around so you could take off the circular area of the skull where the meningioma was to remove it. But what the surgeon did not know, or no one knew, was that the meningioma had sprouted blood vessels up into the inner table of the skull. So when the portion of the skull was removed, all heck broke loose. Blood splashed everywhere, shot everywhere. And at that point is when I really gained a lot of respect for Dr. Edwards. Dr. Edwards, before you knew it, had central lines in, had blood running. Dr. Mose, he was trying to stop the bleeding, but was very concerned about making sure that his patient made it through. And so he kept asking the anesthesiologist, what's the blood pressure? What's the blood pressure? Until he finally told her, just tell me every 30 seconds what the blood pressure is. Blood pressure dropped from 80 to 70 to 50 until finally it went down 20, 10, and the anesthesiologist said, I cannot get a blood pressure. At the time that the blood pressure has gone to zero, then the spurting of the blood stops, of course. And so it made it easier in some respects for Dr. Mose to seal off the bleeding, put the skull cap back on, and send the patient to surgical intensive care. All right. I'm thinking, boy, man, that was a close call. And the patient and I bonded. I'm going to definitely be there when she awakens to let her know what happened. So I went there once she awakened and the blood pressure was stable and she was clear of mind to tell her, oh, do you know what happened? And she said, look, I know exactly what happened. Well, how did you know what happened? And she began to tell me the most fantastic story I had ever heard until that time. She told me of a glorious experience in which she was in heaven. I don't remember, honestly, all the detail at that time, because I'm probably thinking, this is a side effect of anesthesiology and losing your blood pressure. But the one part that stuck with me all these years was she said she was in the corner doing part of her experience. She was in the corner at the ceiling looking down. And she seemed so happy and calm, telling the story about how Dr. Mose looked so flustered. And, Dr. Mose had a good sense of humor and liked to joke around a little bit. And she had never seen him that serious and that flustered and rattled. And she talked about how Dr. Edwards had run around and just been the man. And she could tell everything that was said, everything that was done, didn't matter what angle, didn't matter that her eyes had been taped shut. I could never figure that out until years later, I began to hear about something called near-death experience. And I knew exactly that she had had a near-death experience. Now, those who have had near-death experiences, they never want to come back to Earth unless they have something that's very special that they feel that they have to accomplish. But just like her, she was very happy and content. They said that the people who've had near-death experiences do change. They become happier, more at peace with themselves. They tell a story of going through a tunnel. Although, okay, let's say that thousands and thousands of people have had this experience. Some are slightly different, but there are a few commonalities between the experience. One, very common, is they feel like they're going through a tunnel of light, and on the other side, they're waiting relatives that have died, people that have been close to them. These people greet them and show them around. They said the lights, the colors you've never seen before, the colors that you have seen before, much brighter and nicer, the sound of the music. There's just a general peace and love feeling that's there. You can talk to people without actually speaking, and they describe a situation very similar to that. Because it's such a common experience, and because there are many cases where it was provable that the person could only have found out some information by actually seeing it while they were clinically dead, that I have grown to believe that there is a heaven after death. But I'm not here to try to convince you of that. But I do recommend that you see a YouTube video that says, "Is there life after death?" And in this video, there are many videos about people's experiences having this, and I recommend that you look at a few. But in this particular one, there are people who actually study it, and they can tell you case after case after case. It's a video on YouTube called "Is There Life After Death?" and I recommend it. I hope there is, and I hope that everyone who does live on Earth know that this may just be a transition and that better days are coming. But this is Dr. John Greene with RoweDocs Telemedicine Corporation. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, press like and subscribe.